Hi, Lester, Wushu engineer. Sorry about my voice. I have a bit of a case of the dreaded lurgy at the moment, but I wanted to get this out there. The Wushu Scientist spoke recently at her Confirmation of Candidature presentation at the University of Southern Queensland here in Australia. As mentioned in a previous video, the topic that she's investigating will hopefully lay the foundation for more in-depth study of the active physiological mechanisms associated with the traditional martial arts concept of Qi. The topic for her study is, this is a long one, Intra-abdominal pressure and neuromuscular activation of pelvic and abdominal musculature in traditional martial arts practitioners. So without further ado, I'll let the Wushu Scientist explain a bit more about what she's intending to do.
This research has been done in collaboration with the Chinese Martial Arts and Health Center and the Martial Arts Research and Testing Laboratory, which is located just outside of Toowoomba. So a little bit about myself. So as I mentioned, I own and run a traditional Chinese martial arts school, the Chinese Martial Arts and Health Center Australia. And I run that together with my husband, and we've been running that for about 12 years now. My background is originally in animal science, and then I've shifted into sports science. And so one of the reasons that I'm doing this and what allows me to be able to do this research is that we have access to a number of highly trained martial artists who will be participating in this study, including my husband, who's the head of our system in Australia. And our system is a traditional Chinese Kung Fu or Wushu. I'll get into that shortly. So it's a very traditional system that has developed very much independently of the West. Some of the key differences in traditional Chinese martial arts are the methods of force production and power generation, and also stabilizing the body. There are a lot of concepts. There's a huge theory behind traditional Chinese martial arts. Obviously, it's developed over a very long time. But many of the concepts are very poorly understood, even among the martial arts practitioners themselves. And one of those is the concept of Qi. You ask a number of different people, and they'll all give you a different explanation of what they understand Qi is. Recent studies have kind of indicated a link between what they call the concept of Qi, and it's just stating that it's closely related to tissue or interstitial fluid. And looking at the traditional literature, they talk about Qi very much associated with the dantian, and when I say the dantian, I'm generally referring to the lower dantian, which is this area just below the belly button, which actually relates to the pelvic cavity. Some people theorize that the concept of Qi is related to internal pressure. So how do we measure these internal pressures? So the key pressure that we're going to be looking at in the study is intra-abdominal pressure. And so intra-abdominal pressure can be measured directly, but this is a very invasive method, so it's not very practical for our studies. So we're going to be using a surrogate measure instead, which is the measure of intragastric pressure measured by an esophageal catheter placed into the stomach. And this has been shown to have a very close relationship to intra-abdominal pressure measured directly. No studies that I've been able to find have been done on intra-abdominal pressure in Wushu, in traditional Chinese martial arts. There have been some studies that have been done in Qigong and showing connection between Qigong and intra-abdominal pressure. And there are many different forms of Qigong. Most Qigong forms are actually a health-based system, and that's where a lot of the research has been more in terms of the health side of Qigong. But Qigong is also a very integral part of traditional Wushu, traditional martial arts training. This graph here shows, this is a study that was done comparing a Qigong maneuver that was developed to be used in high G forces, comparing it to a standard, a conventional anti-G straining maneuver that so involves pressurizing the body and rapid breaths to deal with high Gs. And so this graph, what it shows, so the first line here is esophageal pressure during the Qigong maneuver. So they're measuring the pressure around the esophageal area. So that is showing, so here are the breaths. And this is showing that during the Qigong maneuver, the esophageal pressure remained very low and steady. And the second line here is the gastric pressure, or the indication of intra-abdominal pressure during the Qigong maneuver. And that is this line here, and you can see that throughout the breaths, it remained relatively steady and high. During the conventional anti-G straining maneuver, we have this line here, which is the esophageal pressure, and you can see that during the breaths, it rapidly decreased and increased during each breath. Yeah, that's one of the X's. And then the same with the gastric pressure as well. So marked changes in the pressure. So this shows that there is a connection between Qigong maneuvers, Qigong practice, and ability to control internal pressures. There has also been some research done in other martial arts systems on intra-abdominal pressure. Judo practitioners were found to produce greater intra-abdominal pressure and use a lower level of maximal intra-abdominal pressure during physical activity. And then and just another review by Tayashiki suggests, based on studies that have been done in this area, that control of intra-abdominal pressure is one of the key performance indicators in activities involving lifting a heavy load or contacting the body with others, for example, in martial arts. And in other sports, there's been quite a lot of study done on the use of intra-abdominal pressure. In weightlifting, it's commonly, breath control is commonly used, and it's believed to be a means of increasing maximal force production and lumbar stability. But the association between intra-abdominal pressure and lumbar stability or maximum force production is not well understood, and that's been shown by a number of studies. There was a study by Harmon et al. That found that the peak value of intra-abdominal pressure followed the lifting motion onset, so there was a delay in the pressure, and so they felt that it may not contribute substantially towards maximum force production, as the timing was just out. A reason for some of these limitations that they've found may be that the participants were not sufficiently skilled in controlling the internal pressures. So the research that I'm proposing will be focusing on intra-abdominal pressure, pelvic and abdominal muscular activation, and breath control. And so my hypothesis, and this is what I want to try and find out, is whether internal martial arts practitioners are able to control and produce high levels of intra-abdominal pressure, and whether this is actually related to exerting force or dealing with incoming forces. So in this study, we're going to be choosing 2 participant groups. We're going to be aiming for about 10 in each group. And the martial arts practitioners will have over a year of intensive training and some of these people in this picture will be part of that study. And the controlled participants will be age, height, weight, and gender matched with no martial arts experience. So both groups will be performing 2 tests. The first test, stability under loading test, will involve someone being pushed on the chest from a handheld force measurement device, and there will be, they will have to stand at a certain point with the device against their chest and hip area so that they can't just lean into it. So as the pressure is applied to the chest, they will just be resisting that pressure, and then at the point where they have to take a step back, that's basically the amount of force that will be measured. And the second test, stability while pushing, involves the person standing with their feet in line with a force plate, so very, very close, and just one hand against the force plate and applying as much pressure as they can from that position. So those 2 tests were actually developed for use in martial arts to look at measure someone's internal stability and core strength in terms of exerting force for very close space and dealing with incoming forces. And so during these tests, we will be taking the following measurements. So we'll be measuring intragastric pressure with an esophageal catheter, and as well as esophageal pressure and diaphragm EMG. So we're also measuring the activity of the diaphragm. And then we will also have a surface EMG on the sternocleidomastoid, parasternal, rectus abdominis, and transverse abdominal internal oblique muscle groups. And then we will also have the force measurements from the load cell and the handheld force gauge. So we had a very brief visit to the lab at the end of last year, and we just had a very brief initial look at measuring intra-abdominal pressure. So I'll just show you this brief video clip here.
Yeah, that's a lot better now.
Yeah, something's happening there.
That's pretty good. Wow. That's good. So there you go. There is a correlation between that and the force that I'm producing.
Yeah.
But we haven't measured force.
We haven't measured force.
That's the thing, isn't it?
I can just feel it.
Yeah.
So that's what we need to do next, is set up to measure force.
Okay. So it just it showed there very, very briefly that there was something happening there with the intra-abdominal pressure as he was pushing. So we're looking forward to doing some more investigation into that. If we find a connection between intra-abdominal pressure and the generation of force or stabilization of the body used in traditional martial arts, this may have a benefit in terms of other sports and exercise activities, and just helping to further understand more about how intra-abdominal pressure might be used. And also it is a foundation for more studies into traditional Chinese martial arts.
In conclusion, we hope that this study will establish a firm foundation for better understanding of the physiological mechanisms involved in the traditional martial arts phenomenon known as Qi. The benefits of understanding this concept extend past the realm of martial arts and may be beneficial in terms of natural performance enhancement for athletes competing in other sports and disciplines. These benefits also include the potential to be applied to the greater community for health improvement and postural enhancement. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you next time. Cheers.